Here it is. Today's video is brought to you by my sleeping kitty cat. His name is Tuxedo Tom, and he really likes to cuddle. So, before I start, I just want to say, I don't have any hate towards this guy. I'm not doing this from a place of malice. I'm doing this from a place of, dude, you're presenting ideas that are wrong. I'm just trying to help you correct those things and hopefully learn and grow from this. No hard feelings, dude. Like, honestly, I just want you to understand that the things that you're saying can be hurtful to a lot of people, and I want to help you learn and grow from this experience, if that's possible. So anyway, it finally happened. I finally got some idiot commenting on my video a bunch of stupid stuff that is completely wrong. So the video in question is one I just put out this past Monday, like 3 days ago. And it was a video talking mostly about intersex conditions and how there is more than two sexes, and about how biology is a little bit messier than a lot of people, really want to admit that it is. Especially people on the right who are like, no, there's only two sexes and sex and gender is the same thing, blah, blah, blah. So we're gonna dive in a little bit more to this topic, I guess, and respond to this dude's comment and just kind of talk about areas where he was wrong. There are a few areas where, he actually said like one thing right once. Um, so the first thing this guy says is, I have a degree in biology, so let's clear up some things. First of all, dude, there are a lot of things that you say that are kind of just straight up inaccurate when it comes to biology. Um, Secondly, one of the videos of his that I was watching, he mentions that he's just over 40. And so that means if you do legitimately have a degree in biology, then that degree is probably from about 20 years ago. A lot of things that they would have been teaching 20 years ago are completely different now, especially when it comes to sex and gender and our understanding of sex and gender. Anyway, the first thing that he says in his list of things he wants to clear up, he says, number one, transgender is not, which he misspelled this here, but I'm assuming he meant to say hermaphrodites, i.e., intersex. And first, I just want to say I wasn't talking about transgender people at all in this video. I mentioned it at the very end in the context of I might want to do a video about how sex and gender are related, and that would, cover transgenderism a little bit. But I don't think I really ever talked about transgender people. But I understand why you might have assumed that, and we'll get to that later. Secondly, hermaphrodite is not a term that's generally used anymore. In fact, there's kind of a little bit of a stigma around it, and it's a very narrow term because hermaphrodite historically referred to someone who had both sets of genitalia, whereas intersex can refer to a wide array of anyone who doesn't have just the standard male or just the standard female set. So intersex is a lot more inclusive and a lot broader of a term that can kind of encompass everything. So that's kind of the term that people use now. And hermaphrodite is honestly just not considered accurate or respectful anymore. So his number 2 point is, genetic defect does not mean another sex/gender. Example, XXY, XYY, just Y. If you have the Y chromosome, you are genetic male that form normally or defective. I think your grammar was a little bit off there, but I understand what you're saying. You're saying that you think that anyone who has a Y chromosome is male. So we're gonna move forward assuming that like that's what your definition of male is just someone with a Y chromosome, which is not the most accurate definition. And no matter how you define male or female, there's always going to be people that don't fit that. There have been cases where there are people who are born with a normal set of chromosomes, 46 chromosomes, and their sex chromosome is XY. And they are born looking and functioning like a female. They have functional ovaries, they have a functional uterus. She actually had a defect where her body didn't react to androgen, which are the male hormones such as testosterone. And so since her body wasn't sensitive to that, her body was only reacting to the estrogen, which even someone who is born male and has a male body does have a base level of estrogen in it. But anyway, so her body was just androgen insensitive, and so only reacted to the estrogen, and that's why she developed as a woman. These people can even give birth to a healthy baby. And so by your definition, that person would be considered a man. Secondly, I know that you do use the term sex and gender interchangeably, and they are not the same. I think for a long time they were used in a somewhat interchangeable way, and I definitely agree with what you said in one of your videos where um gender is just a nicer term to use. And I think that there are places where people use the word gender when they mean sex, and there are places where people use sex and they mean the word gender, but they're definitely not the same thing. And when we're talking in a scientific context, I think it's important to make the distinction. So when we're talking about biology, we're talking about sex because gender is a social construct. That's why we talk about gender roles. Gender is basically the idea of how a person should act or perform or kind of present themselves. Usually, there are a lot of people that tie that to your sex. So, if you are born a female, typically that person will take on the woman gender role. However, that is not always the case. Number 3 on your list, you say physical alteration does not equal changing sex/gender, which again, you're using those terms interchangeably. They do not mean the same thing. For example, fake boobs on a man does not make him a woman. Fake penis on a woman does not make her a man. I don't think anywhere in the video was I talking about doing physical alterations in that kind of way. Most people who transition, they transition medically, meaning that they take hormones. So if you see a trans woman with breasts, usually they are real breasts that she grew because she's taking estrogen, and that's the effect that estrogen has on the body. You see a trans man with facial hair, that's not fake facial hair. He's taking testosterone, and that is having an effect on his body. These aren't fake, you know? These are people are taking hormones, and it is having an actual effect on their body to change their body to something that they feel more comfortable with. At this point, you stopped numbering things, but this would, be your fourth statement or whatever. Which also you say finally, but it's only like halfway through, so I don't know. I saw you do that in a video too. You were like 11 minutes in out of 19, and you were like, and finally, and then kept on going for like 8 more minutes. I don't know, just thought it was funny. Gender ID philosophy is based on Cartesian flaw. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. I don't know if you're like referring to like Cartesian theater or like Cartesian materialism. I'm not 100% sure what you mean there. But anyway, Rene Descartes presented the mind-body argument, which for anyone unfamiliar, the mind-body argument is basically just saying that the mind and body are separate entities. So the mind is connected to your soul, to an ethereal part of you that is separate from the physical part of you. But anyway, Rene Descartes presented the mind-body argument hundreds of years ago. It was defeated because it is not logical or rational to attempt to remove one's thoughts from their physical body, meaning no matter how we feel in our mind, those feelings are still directly influenced by the condition of our body, period. I agree with you a little bit on this one. I mean, I think that there still is some philosophical debate about this. I think that might be true. I'm not here to discuss philosophy, so if anything, it's a video about biology and psychology. But even if the mind is dependent on the body and or vice versa, brain scans have actually shown that a trans woman's brain, so someone who was born as male and then transitioned to become a woman, they found that a trans woman's brain is more identical to a cis woman's brain than it is to a man's brain. So someone who chooses to transition, it's usually because their brain is already functioning the same way that their target gender is functioning. And the same is true the other way around. A trans man, they've done brain scans, and a trans man's brain is more similar to a cis man's brain than it is to a cis woman's brain. So even if you are correct in that the body and mind are kind of not really separated at all, there are still things to show that there are parts of the body that are acting differently. You know, the brain is saying I'm female and I'm recognizing myself as female, but the body is male. Agree with your argument there, but I don't think that that kind of disproves the validity of transgenderism. If anything, I feel like it strengthens. So next you say gender dysphoria is a serious mental health illness condition. Um Again, you misspelled something there. I feel like if you're going to leave like a comment trying to prove me wrong, you know, and trying to like have the intellectual high ground, I don't know, use an editor. Like honestly, Grammarly is free and it'll check your spellings. Again, not trying to judge you, like just trying to legitimately offer, you know, helpful advice. But yeah, no, I would agree gender dysphoria is bad. It is something that is serious that we should talk about. You know, people have had so much dysphoria between what they feel and what they see in themselves that it's led people to suicide. You know, it really is that bad. It is a serious mental health condition that we should be talking about. Um, but the way that we treat that isn't saying no, you're wrong, you're forced to live in this body that you don't like. uh the treatment for that dysphoria is fixing the thing that we can, fixing the body so that way it more matches what the person perceives of themselves, you know, and so we bring those things into alignment so they're not as dysphoric. And I don't know, I feel like you don't have a strong understanding of like what dysphoria means. I saw one of your videos, you were talking about it and you were talking about how like dysphoria is just like delusion. I don't know, after listening to that little section of that video, I feel like you don't really have a firm understanding of dysphoria or how gender dysphoria actually affects people. Because no, it is a very serious thing. You know, if you're gonna say that like that wanting to transition is like a mental health illness condition, then like along those same lines, and you might agree with this already, but like along those same lines, like you should say that people who are getting plastic surgery or hair plugs or, you know, men who are taking testosterone, um, you know, any of those things along your same line of logic should be considered, you know, a mental health illness condition. That's the term you use. That's why I keep using it. It sounds funny though. You know, so like I don't know, are you okay with people getting plastic surgery and hair plugs? Because I feel like those are all very normal things that are very like societally accepted. Uh and then we get down to your last couple of comments. It is not normal to believe you were born in the wrong body. That is the dysphoria that leads to the mental health illness called transgender.
I don't even know where to start with you.
First of all, calling transgender a mental health illness, um, I mean, it's kind of offensive. I feel like you know that. I feel like anyone would know that. It is kind of normal for people to feel like they're born in the wrong body, even if they're not, you know, transitioning. Even if it's just someone getting hair plugs and stuff, that's them feeling like their body is incorrect and that their body isn't matching how they perceive themselves, and then them taking the steps to fix that. So I don't know. I think that, yeah, it is kind of normal to not have your body match what you see, not have how you perceive yourself to match the physical reality, and then wanting to change that physical reality because we have the means to do that. You know, we have the means to change our reality. We have the means to change our body. So if we see our body and it's not what we want it to be, why is it so bad to change that? You know, it's not the most common thing in the world for there to be that level of dysphoria to the point where someone's going to get surgery and take hormones, but it does happen a fair amount. You know, there are a lot of trans people out. Lastly, you say human beings are not biologically possible to change their sex/gender. It's just not possible. Again, you're using sex/gender meaning the same thing. They're not the same thing. I'm not gonna talk about that every single time. It is possible to have the body make those physical changes after the person's already been born, and even taking hormones. You can take hormones as an adult. I've seen like stuff about people in their 70s transitioning, and you can take hormones and it'll still affect your body that way. Estrogen has that same effect on that body whether you were born, male or female. The way that the cells respond is going to be the same as how a cis woman's cells would respond. So like again, depending on like what your actual like definition of sex is, no matter what it is, it's something that we can change. And not even talking about trans issues, most medications that we do modify our biology some way or another. Literally, we can do all kinds of things to affect our biology, and we do that kind of stuff on a daily basis. So like if you're against people changing their biology, then again, you should be against hair transplants, you should be against plastic surgery, you should be against ED medication. Anyway, the very last part of your comment, you say good video, and I'm going to assume that you're not being sarcastic or snarky about it. um because again, I'm approaching this from a place of love, man. I want to help you be informed, and I want to help you avoid, making these hateful comments, and hopefully helping you understand these things a little bit better. So, thanks, man. I feel like I worked pretty hard on that video, and so having someone, compliment me on the video, that actually feels really good, dude. So honestly, thank you for that. I watched one of your videos. And honestly, I think you're a very charismatic guy. I think that you're a smart guy. I think that you just got some wrong information fed to you at some point. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. If y'all like this video, like and subscribe, do the stuff, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, bye.